Hello and welcome to episode 95 of Linux After Dark. I'm Joe.
I'm Chris.
I'm Gary.
And I'm May.
Welcome back all. A question that I've had in my mind lately is, what should I learn next? Because I feel like I can just about throw a website up. I'm pretty confident with storage stuff, with ZFS and sending snapshots around and everything. I've tried every single desktop going and I feel like I know what's going on there. So what should I learn next in the Linux and open source world? Don't say Docker.
I feel like the only thing you can do at this point is start training an AI on your own edits so that you can redo the edits without ever needing to do any work. Because that's how LLMs work, right?
Yeah. I'm sure that the shows would be beautifully edited if I got an LLM on the case.
What do you mean? I think it'd be great.
I think this comes in peaks and troughs, right? There's been times where I've actually felt a bit disheartened when I think, I don't really know what to do. And usually something presents itself that shifts that dynamic. It might be that the distribution you run fundamentally changes something and you have to learn how to deal with the new system. The larger shift, obviously, in moderately recent memory would be moving from, say, sysv init to systemd or something like that. But it doesn't have to be that dramatic. A better example maybe recently is Python. A lot of people get very angry because Python is now marked as sacrosanct in most distributions of Linux. So if you try to do pip install thing, it says, no, we're not doing that, are we? We're going to use some kind of environment. And it makes people angry. I understand, but I am very much on their side because you can get into a lot of bother there. So I do think usually when I get into this, what should I do next? After a while, something presents itself to me. You know, WordPress, for example, has been teetering on the edge of complete implosion for ages. And it may well tip over, Joe. And suddenly you'll find yourself properly learning Hugo or Jekyll or something like that because you don't have a choice. So maybe to play devil's advocate to your instinct, enjoy the lull might be part of it. Because drama is never far away. But that isn't really true to the spirit of your question. I think Andy Balaam from Linux Dev Time is on the money with what he usually says, which is find something you want to solve or do, and everything else just kind of falls into place. That's why he always does his little game. Maybe he hangs it on a different hook, but there's nothing quite like a sort of dangled carrot. The difficulty is self-generating that, becoming an autodidact. Like you with Jellyfin. You wanted Jellyfin to work, and I'm not saying learn Docker. I'm using this as an example of you had a clear objective, but still you were like, oh, fuck this in the end.
Well, Jellyfin's a great example, right? Because I wanted to get hardware acceleration working, and I was just too thick, couldn't get it to work. So I just worked around it. I just made the clients do direct play whenever possible. And it turns out that if you're using a Fire Stick, direct play is supported for most codecs.
I've recently tried and failed yet again to really head towards some kind of programming language. And I picked Python, but life just gets in the way. And I did the Replit 100 Days of Python. I looked up various kind of discussion forums, got an app on my phone, but you lose momentum. And I didn't follow exactly what I just said there. I didn't really have a reason why, other than I just wanted to get a bit more aware.
Yeah, you didn't have the motivation, so you didn't stick with it.
Exactly, that's it. Whereas if I had a problem I was trying to solve, let's say an application for this doesn't exist, I need it, let's just see where it takes me, I think I would have had a lot more success.
Yeah, in my case, I was shit scared of losing all my data. And so I learned about ZFS and how to back it up properly.
If you need another way to look at this, maybe, predators are lazy. And I don't know if you've noticed, but humans are predatory species. So naturally, we don't want to expend energy on things unless there's a good reason to.
It is really nice when things click, though. I did have recently one that did where I'd been using traffic. It's very complex and powerful, sort of all-in-one soft router, reverse proxy, container networking management platform that you can declare in TOML or YAML. Really popular, especially a little while ago with Docker.
That's the one that looks like it should be Trafic.
Exactly. And it does automated SSL. That was really the reason that I wanted to use it, because increasingly, even for internal services, if you don't have a certificate and a padlock, your web browser is going to start saying you're in danger. And so that was what attracted me to it. And I got my head around the syntax for version 1, then version 2 changed it all. And I really like Caddy. Now, obviously, like Jim and Alan, this comes up every so often in 2.5 admins. I'm not really a seasoned Apache Nginx person. I've not had to configure that side of things before. Caddy, for me, is incredibly simple in terms of setting it up and getting the basic goal, which is SSL certificates. And I recently did push through on moving a lot of stuff away from Traffic to Caddy and got it all stood up. And I'm much happier now that I have done that, because the cognitive load of maintaining that is so much lighter, and I'm much happier.
I think this is a really interesting question, right? It's, you chose the thing you wanted to learn, Chris, and very quickly learned that you'd perhaps drawn the line in the wrong place in learning an entire new tool, rather than just sharpening the skill set that you already have a little bit. Like in your SSL example, all of my internal reverse proxy stuff is still Nginx, because I learned how to do that years and years ago, and it works. And when I came to want to do SSL internally, I just went and got some wildcard Let's Encrypt certs, and I used those with the Nginx reverse proxy infrastructure I'd already got set up. So I guess the other thing, Joe, and it doesn't really answer your question, is set yourself a boundary of the effort you're going to go to learn said new skill, so that you don't end up in a position where you're like, I can't be bothered, I'm just going to work around it.
It's always good to have fingers in pies too, because if you take the long curve, sometimes you pick up on something that starts with the best of intentions, with a small team. It's a lovely FOSS project. And you think, oh, this is great. I love it. I can see the GitHub repository. There's no big company. And then the acceleration begins. The popularity begins. You ignore the kind of tiny voice in your head that says, this isn't what I like about this. This is actively the opposite of what I like about this project. Oh, but it's only a little bit of that is happening, and it still does everything I need. And then it happens more and more and more. And there will come a time where suddenly it's all gone to shit.
Suddenly the project is colliding with Nazis or something. That doesn't happen very often.
Exactly. And so if you haven't warmed up your next move, and I think this has got worse recently, that can be quite annoying, especially if it's a service. I tend to fall into this trap, I'm sure many people do, of being the IT support for your family, certainly, and friends, and being the central point where they come to rely on things you administer. If one of those things goes wrong, it's such a pain, especially if you've sat back and gone, it just works, it just works, it just works. It doesn't work as well as before, but it still kind of just works. It's not really working now, but I can't be bothered to get all those people. Oh, it's too late. Now I actually have a deadline.
Might you be talking about Plex here, Chris?
Of course I am. And when this happened, Gary said, well, you're fine, aren't you? Because you've got a Plex Pass. No, I don't. I've been rolling Plex since Plex Pass didn't exist, since it wasn't even called Plex, really.
But you were too tight to pay for it.
Well, I wasn't going to pay for it, and I'm glad that I didn't, because it's now, it's just a bonfire of shite. Like, it's so bad, and so aggressively bad. We're talking about rolling out broken applications, like overwhelmingly negative feedback, and just going, no, this is what we're doing, and then saying everybody has to pay for it. And yes, that's where I'm at. I personally just about use Jellyfin, but it's immature in places because it just doesn't have the momentum. And that's where I am. I've got to the end of this month to decide, do I pay the piper for a little bit more time? But no, because I just think it's a waste of money, isn't it? They're just going to keep going down shit avenue.
Well, on the flip side, I'm really glad that I paid them my $100 10 years ago, because anything they do isn't my problem. And if my wife comes to me and says, oh, the app's a bit rubbish now, I can just shrug, and that's fine.
Well, I am very glad that I recently set my mum up with Jellyfin. I bought her a Fire Stick for Mother's Day and put a Wise 5070 in her house as a ZFS backup target for my backups, but also to run Jellyfin on. And it's been absolutely great. No complaints whatsoever.
I think the mistake is I've created a single point of failure in my case. What I should have done is exactly what you have said, Joe. I should have taught them all to fish. Instead, they come knocking on my door with their plates, wanting the fish cooked and served. And I should have said, here's a fucking fishing rod. If you want some fish, go and catch it yourself. I'll give you some lessons and then you're on your own. You each have to host your own infrastructure for this instead of, there must be people that are familiar with this who say, and it's all obviously completely legally ripped from the original DVDs because I have an extensive collection, but they'll WhatsApp me and say, can I have this? Can I have this? And suddenly you're a system administrator for a multi-user server. So maybe it's a good thing. Maybe at the end of the month, I should just say, no, they've taken it out back and shot it in the head. Sorry, you're going to have to find another way to achieve this.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by people who support us with PayPal and Patreon. Go to linuxafterdark.net/support for details of how you can support us too. Patreon supporters have the option to listen to episodes without ads like this. And it's not just this show. There's Late Night Linux for news, discoveries, audience input, and misanthropy, 2.5 admins about system administration, Linux Matters for upbeat, family-friendly adventures, Linux Dev Time about developing with and for Linux, Hybrid Cloud Show for everything private and public cloud, and Ask the Hosts for off-topic questions from you. You can even get some episodes a bit early. We've got a lot going on, and it's only possible because of the people who support us. So if you like what we do and can afford it, it would be great if you could support us too at linuxafterdark.net/support. I realise that we're going to get a lot of emails saying, Nix, that's what you should learn, Joe.
Buddy, I'm getting those emails now.
I just don't want to learn Nix. Sorry.
Isn't Nix last year's thing now? There must be a new thing by now, surely.
There's bound to be, surely. And I think the reason that I don't want to learn Nix is it's solving a problem that I don't have. And I think that's what we're back to, aren't we? Wait till I've got a problem and then find the best solution to solve that problem and learn that thing. Don't go looking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And I think the problem here is that once upon a time, I had more time. And I used to play with various Linux distros, desktop distros, on my EPC and various other hardware. And I did it just for the fun of it. Whereas I think now I'm just older, more jaded, less time, more stress, all the rest of it. And so I just don't really have the time or energy to just play with stuff for the sake of it. It has to be able to solve a problem for me.
Yeah, I think that that's true of me as well. I get very little time to go and sit and do a computer thing in my office on my own. There is something every evening that I probably could do, but ultimately I would rather just be doing something else. I'd rather be with the family or outside or hiding in the garage working on the car. I think I've moved on from, I should probably use Traffic because that's the cool new reverse proxy thing and move off of Nginx, or I should try this new open source photo hosting thing and move off of Google Photos or iCloud. Because ultimately I know that the 2 hours I sink into trying that thing now is going to be many, many hours of fiddling with it and changing it and getting it working perfectly and then teaching my family how to use it. And I just don't have the time to invest in it now.
It's when it goes wrong as well, isn't it? Because as much as I waxed lyrical about Caddy, there was a tail to that process where you forget something because it's slightly different. And one of those things was my wife saying, my Home Assistant app's not working. I forgot to reverse proxy. Then you have to go in and sort the configuration out. And I do think certainly for me, as I get older, I fear change because of the tale of remediation that I have to do when I mess it up. And I just rather it just worked and coasted along. But I do think, Joe, to give yourself credit, you still do warm up the alternatives. You know, if tomorrow ZFS for some reason became completely untenable for you, you could run ButterFS. And I'm talking about if you had to. You wouldn't necessarily maybe choose to, but you're familiar enough with the tooling and how it works. And I think probably most of the stuff you've put in your list, you've warmed up to a certain degree just out of general interest.
Yeah, I understand the concepts, I suppose. I'm not just pressing buttons in a specific order to get something to happen. I've taken the time to understand about data sets, about snapshots, about replication, and how that works, at least on a somewhat deeper level than the surface. And so, yeah, I could almost certainly apply what I've learned about ZFS to ButterFS. And similarly, what I know about Apache, I could apply to other web servers.
And naturally, I think if you're into FOSS and different operating systems, you think about package management. You know, it's not hugely difficult, but you become adept at switching around between things, whether that's Alpine that we've played with recently or DNF. They all have slightly different changes, but the same copy on write file systems, there's going to be certain key principles that you're going to be reaching for, and you can adjust. And I do think you'll look back at some point and go, wow, do you remember when we recorded that episode where I didn't know what to do? God, that feels like a lifetime ago, because now there's so much that I'm doing. You've just come to the end of a wave of a double reshuffle of your backup system, for example. You're probably a bit tired out because you changed your recording rig. It went badly. You had to change that back. You've bought 2 different desktop computers for shifting stuff around. You've actually done a lot recently. So I think this is probably your brain going, stop.
Maybe, right, yeah. I actually came to turn on my recording machine today and it didn't turn on. I thought, oh shit, what am I going to do? And I traced the cables and everything and it just wouldn't turn on. So I swapped the power cable out, thinking maybe the fuse is gone, and suddenly it worked. And then I tested the power cable. The fuse was fine, cable was fine. So I've literally no idea what happened. So I've got that. I've now got to deal with that. Like, what was that about? Why didn't it work briefly?
I guess I didn't really expect this to turn into psychoanalyzing Joe, but here we are.
I do think there's an underlying subtext here where a seed was planted for Cal Newport. And certainly what Gary said has made me think that maybe, you know, since we touched that tome, Gary's tried to go with a dumb phone. Mm-hmm. Admittedly, it didn't work, but he's tried it. And now he's talking about fixing cars. The ukulele can only be a couple of clicks away on Amazon.
I'm telling you, the relief of closing the laptop and going outside and rebuilding a carburetor was like no other.
Joe, you got to be careful. You're going to buy a car.
I do think, though, while we're on the psychoanalysis bit, I've had a time off from work recently from a very busy period there. And quite often, just as we've been about to give up, we stop for the day or stop for lunch and I just walk, and something out of context will shift how I'm thinking so that I sit down in my chair, or maybe it's low blood sugar, God knows, some factor has changed. And you sit down and you go, of course it's this. Let's try that. And that thing works. So I do think it's important to have peaks and troughs of how you think about these things and taking a break from a problem or a concept and coming back to it again and again. And eventually the time will naturally be right for that avenue to be explored more fully.
You're definitely right about a change of circumstances, whether that is just going for a walk or whether that is going out and getting drunk or whatever it is, just getting away from the problem. Often you will find that you have a solution for that problem when you get back to it.
So maybe you just need a change of scenery and then you'll solve the problem of not having a problem to solve.
Genius.
What I'm saying, Joe, is be the problem you want to see in the world.
I just think that you're finding another excuse to go and drink cider in the park late at night, to be honest. But there we go.
I don't need any excuses to do that, Gary. Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, but until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Chris.
I've been Gary.
And I've been May.
See you later.